Hi, I'm John Trishler from Specialty Performance Parts, and today we're going to install our A-pillar light kit in a 2021 plus Ford Bronco. We have our SPV parts A-pillar light brackets right here. We have a set of rigid 360 series 4-inch lights here, and our plug-and-play A-pillar harness. Just a quick note on certain lights, they don't come with connectors on the lights, but our plug-and-play harnesses include connectors for the lights that don't, and the ones that do have connectors on them, we make sure that you have the right set of adapters to plug directly into our harness to make everything plug and play. So let's go ahead and get started. It's going to be very, very simple on the Bronco. All right, so on the 2021 plus Ford Bronco, Ford made it pretty easy for you to add some accessories here. So you're going to notice, and we've taken these up a little bit here to save some time, you've got a star type screw bolt here and one here as well. They are different sizes. So you can take a little drill or an impact tool to remove those and put those back in. If you are using an impact driver though like this, be real careful not to over torque any bolts that you ever use these for, because that is something you can do and damage your vehicle or damage the bolts that you're putting in there. So just use common sense if you are using power tools to do this rather than hand wrenches. All right, so just like we talked about here on the other side, you can get this started on that bracket. You can't tighten it down all the way though, or else you won't be able to get it straight. But we got it started, just like we talked about here on the other side. And now we can go ahead and put our bolts in. Let's see, that's our larger location is over here. All right, so we'll put our bolts back in. We got them started. Now we can take our drill or our impact driver and tighten these down the rest of the way. All right, so now we should be solid as far as that goes. And once again, we can line these lights up where we want them. Try to get them in the same location, just like that. Get them both straight. And I think this one's pretty straight now too. And now we can go ahead and tighten that up as well on this side, just like we did on the other side with our 1/2-inch wrench. And there we go. Get that tightened the rest of the way until it's nice and snug. And we should be set. Now it's just a matter of running our wiring, which should be pretty simple. All right, so we pop our hood here. Prop that up. So our harnesses also come with single connectors here that you can put on your switch wires, and we actually installed those earlier when we did our Radiance light kit, but we can show you a little clip of that here so you can see how that's done. Battery here on this back firewall here, you should be able to see those switch wires right here. There's some additional wires right down here that allow us to tap in where the wires are run in different locations in the truck, such as the windshield in the rear, and then up in the front grille here, and in the passenger side floorboard. You'll notice there's some electrical tape right here that are holding our wires in place. You can just pull those wires right through that electrical tape like this, and they'll pull out. And then you'll have access to them here just like this. We've gone ahead and put our little labels on our auxiliary wires. These are our powered ones. So we know which one's which real easily without having to reference back to that manual. And down here we have our pass-through wires. And so we're gonna go ahead and label those as well. And once we do that, we'll be able to plug them into each other if we wanted to access different areas, again, with that weatherproof, weather-tight seal. And then again, our other switch wires here will be prepped and ready for any of our other SPV plug-and-play harnesses. So whether we need to access another location and then use one of our SPV harnesses or plug directly into these powered wires here, we're going to have plug-and-play weatherproof connections in all the locations, and it's just a matter of just rearranging them the way you want them. It becomes the most simplified plug-and-play system you can have once you've got these wires here prepped. And so now we have those labeled as well, and so we can go ahead and put our connectors on. And then it's going to be a lot easier to tell what is what as far as making your connections between the two and so on. So I think it's going to make things a lot more simplified. So again, if you have access to a labeler, that's something you can do if you want to label those wires. All right, so when we want to put our connectors here on our switch wires, it's really easy to do so. I don't like to cut all of that end cap off because it wastes a little bit of wire. I usually keep a little bit there and just strip that off with it. So, you know, in this case, and sometimes you can fold over the wire a little bit too, so you might even want a little bit more, just get you more grip. So I cut off some of that, left some, and now I can strip it from behind here, just like so. So, and I'm trying to keep my hands out of the way as much as I can to the camera so you can see this. Pull down on it, and I can slide this wire off. Again, this is an odd angle because I'm trying to keep out of the camera as much as possible, but you should be able to get an idea here. It looks a little easier if you're not trying to stay out of the camera. Just like so, then you can see there's our wire. Now, in this case, I am going to go ahead and twist this together. I'm going to slide our rubber seal here over top of our wire down to where the insulation starts. And then I'm going to fold this over because I'm using a pretty heavy duty connector here with some big wings, so that'll clear that. Now, depending on which connector you get, most of the time these are the same, but there can be some different gauge wings on different connectors. Then you know, you may or may not fold that over if you can't get the wings all the way over. In this case, we can, so I folded it over. These crimpers here, I like these. You can get these on Amazon. They're about 35 bucks. What I like about these is they're a one squeeze crimp. You can get the other weather pack style crimpers. If you don't have some, you can just again go to Amazon weather pack crimpers or weather pack crimp tools, and you can get those. But again, this is nice because it's one squeeze. We can put that in here just like this. That's what you get. Anyway, that should be good enough anyway. Normally it's gonna be a little cleaner just if you're not trying to stay out of the way. But the main thing is we've got the wire crimped over. It's important that you make sure that when you crimp over the wire, these wings right here in the middle, those need to go over the wire, not the insulation. You don't push the wire up into the tube. You want to crimp over the wire right here. And now from there, we can go ahead and run our plug and play A-pillar harness, connect it to our lights, and plug it into our existing switches, and we should be all set. So the most difficult thing that you have to really figure out in the beginning is just where to run your wires, because as far as everything else goes, plugging them in is very, very simple. So let's do that. So first, take a look at this. We've got one end here, which we have a connector for our one light, all right? And we've got another connector here for the other light. This end comes down to where our switch wires, ground, and everything are gonna be. So this end of the harness is gonna go to this side, all right? So that means the long side is gonna go to the passenger side. So just remember that when you get these hooked up so you don't have to reverse this harness. All right, so let's see here. We've got our cord from our light itself. It really looks like the easiest thing to do is actually gonna be to remove this larger bolt size here on this side. All right, and we'll move our light aside. I'm not gonna take that completely up, just enough to turn it and get it out of the way. All right, so our plastic cowl here can lift up a little bit, it looks like. And there is a little bit of room back here on the back side where you can tuck a wire. So we're gonna do that real quick. I'm gonna go ahead and shut this hood again for a second. All right, so I want you to notice real quick here, this cowl, if I have that bracket off, and we've taken this back off so that we can get this wire run in here, and we want to lift up this plastic cowl a little bit. There's actually a little bit of a gap back here on the back side where we can actually get our harness for our light in there. And since the light has a little extension harness on it, we should be able to get that on in the engine bay here so that we can connect our light. So There should be just some little clips that hold this in place. You can kind of wiggle on it just like that, see that? Just enough to get that harness run underneath of there. Then we can put our bracket back on there with our light. And so I'm just gonna kind of lay that on there for right now. To get it started here. Just be careful that you obviously don't pinch anything. But again, there's a gap on the top there. Don't get it underneath of the bottom. We can get this kind of fished through, and then there's a gap here in the engine bay. Once we lift this hood up, we should be okay with that. So we've got our connector in here, so we can pull this the rest of the way through. Again, there's a gap right in this area in here, right below the hinge. There's a gap here, and so now you'll see here on the outside of this hinge, I've got my loose connector right here. So I've got plenty of play and cord, so I can just lay that in there now, and I can go ahead and push this the rest of the way down and put our bracket back on with our light on there, tighten it down, and we're good to go. All right, so we'll bring our light back out here, keep it outside this gap right there in that area there, so that when we push this back down, it's out of that gap. And there we go. There's that. We should hopefully have enough slack here that we can kind of pull on that cord. Yep, we can, and pull the excess inside. And so we'll go ahead and tighten that the rest of the way down again with our bolts. And now our light is back in place and it's nice and solid. And like I said, what little excess cord we have here, we can kind of pull on and pull inside here so that there's no extra cord sticking out. And here is our connector right here. You should hopefully be able to see that coming right through the engine bay here. And now we'll be able to plug our harness into that. All right, so again, here's our connector. We've got our switch wires right here. As you can see, this is our harness. We can run this side over to the passenger side, but this is the connector for the driver's side. So all we have to do is plug that in. And if you have a light that doesn't have an amber backlight and you need an adapter, then the adapter just plugs into the end of our harness, and then that plugs into the connector on the light, again, to keep that plug and play. But you can plug this in just like this. You've got your power and grounds right here. So our ground, we can find, again, a bolt here on the firewall area. Here's one right here. We can bolt that to that. The connector is just if you need to ground it to a relay. So if you don't have a relay, or you don't need a relay, in most cases you won't, then you just use the ground ring. You won't use both. They're the same ground. It's just two different ways to do it. So we'll use our ground here. On the switch connection side, we have a white wire, we have a red wire. The red wire is the main power for the light. If you have a light that does not have an amber backlight, you don't use the white wire at all, just push it aside. If you do have an amber backlight, this powers that amber backlight in the A-pillar lights, and these are amber backlit A-pillar lights. So we can pick a switch. Let's see which switches we have left, because we did put our fog lights in here. Looks like we've got our fog lights on switches 1 and 2, so we've got 3. That's the next one in line. So let's just use switch number 3. So we just have to plug that into switch number 3, just like so. All right, now we're done. Our white wire for our amber backlight, we can plug into either another switch. If you have our parking marker adapter that plugs into the headlight, which we have another install video to show you how to install that if you do, then you would just plug this into that. If you've got other lights, such as the Radiance already connected to that, you're going to need a two-way splitter. So the two-way splitter plugs in between the two. All right, so here is our two-way splitter. So we just plug one end into our white wire here on our A-pillar harness, just like so. So then we just plug the other one into, and we'll unplug our Radiance backlight here. We just plug the other one into our Radiance lights here on the other white wire connection here. on our fog harness that has amber backlights as well. And then that plugs into, this goes to our parking marker adapter. Again, if you didn't have that parking marker adapter, then you would just plug it into another switch. You'd still need a two-way splitter just like this to split it into two connections if you wanted to have one switch for that amber backlight. But if you want to tie it in automatically into that parking light marker light, then you can just, you get that adapter and then you can use that instead, and then it's all integrated. So now we've got all of our connections done with the exception of our ground, which we can put on this bolt right here. And then we just have to secure our wires. They're loose, we've got zip ties here, we can secure those, plug in the other side, and we're done. So these are hot hoses, so you don't want to zip tie to any of the coolant hoses, because again, they're hot. You can bring it up here though, keep the excess slack from touching anything hot on the engine. So we got that. We can bring that further over. Again, where we'll end up making our final connections. But we need to zip tie some more, so you can get a little bit more there. All right, so now we're good as far as plugging everything back in again. Got a little bit of our head of ourselves here a minute ago just because we were trying to lay everything out, but now that we know how everything lays out, the best way to do that, we can plug everything back in. And the last thing we need to do is ground it and zip tie it. So again, we've got some slack here we need to get rid of. We also need to tie this cord down on this side in the same way that we did on the other side so that it doesn't get pinched with the hinge. And this little plastic piece kind of below the cowl, you can get this tucked underneath of there to get it out of the way. It's got enough flex, you don't even have to, looks like, take it all the way up. You can just kind of tuck it under the edge, and that's out of the way there. Hopefully you can see around what I'm doing here. So we've got some ground bolts here. I'm going to take one of these loose, and I'm going to put our ground underneath of there. I've got another one over here that I used for the Radiance lights. That is kind of out of the way, a little bit more than that one is there, so I might as well use this one again. All right, so there you see we've got our ground. Now you can see that we have connected our switch wires to our A-pillar harness, and we've zip tied that along. You can see right here, I zip tied it along the other wire bundle that's right there. And again, we're not done. We need to zip tie it a little bit more to tidy it up some more. But you should see basically what you need to do to secure that wire when you bring it in from that cowl area underneath of there for your A-pillar lights. Get that wire run along there, bring it over to your switches over on the other side, and then you can plug them in. You're gonna get the rest of this, you're gonna tie that up the rest of the way so that's nice and secure, and then you'll be all set. And now we should be all set as far as the functionality and the lights being installed. They should work now. So let's try that out real fast. All right, so now you should see our amber backlights are on. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, and visit spvparts.com for these light kits and many others for your Bronco and other off-road vehicles. Don't forget, we also have other performance parts such as cold air kits, performance packs, and so on for your vehicles and your Broncos. So check us out at spvparts.com.